Awesome, awesome. So thank you very much for coming on the show. It's great to meet you because this is how we meet each other nowadays. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your organization and what you're passionate about?
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, thanks for having me, Chris. I'm excited to be on the show. My name is Manny Guardado. I'm the Director of Innovation for Notre Dame Academy Schools of Los Angeles. And I oversee the campus makerspace, which we developed and launched about 3 years ago. And I also work on a new program called the Emphasis Program. I'm managing that, and that's we're trying to refine the high school experience, and we're starting with our campus with our all-girls school, and we're really trying to find ways to encourage students to find their passions, to become curious about the things that they're interested in. And we're doing that through kind of a holistic approach that starts in the classroom and takes the students outside of the school campus. And things I'm passionate about. Well, I love education. I love working with kids. But really at the forefront of my work is the idea that all good educational experiences start from, they start from the human experience and creating positive environments where anybody, children, adults, feel safe and empowered. Those are wonderful spaces, and so really, I'm interested. I've always been interested in trying to create safe places where people can learn.
I love it. So are you actually there right now? Because I can see in the background, I can see 3D printers in the background and all sorts of cool stuff. Or is that just a Zoom background for now?
No. So I'm on campus. I have the
Nice.
The workshop apron. It's on.
Yeah, I noticed the workshop apron too. Do you sell those? Because that looks awesome. I would love to have one of those aprons.
Occasionally my colleagues joke. They say, well, you look like a high-end barista with the workshop apron.
No, but I love the leather straps and everything. It's kind of like a steampunk retro. You're like Thomas Edison, and creating light bulbs sort of thing.
Yeah. Oh, totally. I joke about it, but I was sharing with my colleagues, the importance of coming into a place and kind of putting on your attire, your work uniform, whatever it may be, but it kind of activates something. So I think that when the students come into my creative space and they see me put on the apron, they know it's time to be creative, and it makes something click in their brain. So it's practical. It saves all my work shirts. But there's also kind of a theatrical piece to it, and I think that it helps make this space unique. And we're I just had the 3D printers running this morning. It's a living space. I'm not going to pan the camera because it's a mess in here.
No, don't worry.
A bunch of stuff, but I'm on campus. I'm always in the lab.
I love that. Actually, do the students have aprons too? Because it kind of reminds me of how when you put something different on, it makes you feel different, right? It's kind of like, wearing casual clothes or wearing formal wear. It sort of changes your sense of self, and sort of putting that on kind of puts you in a different mindset, right?
Yes, that's absolutely right. Yeah, I think that when the students come in here, we don't have aprons for them, but there's always an onboarding process. Everyone settles in. We conduct business at the beginning of class, and really that's where we go over just announcements, or we talk about the projects that we're working on. I think that one of the and it's a really important process to the way that we learn in the space, because it's an informal learning environment. I don't have I don't have homework assignments to give them or formal papers for them to write. Really, they come in here and we discuss an engineering challenge or some kind of creative challenge, and then they work in small teams to figure it out. And whether we cover either a new piece of technology or a new design methodology, we start with that. We go over that during our business portion of class. And then the rest of it is really an open-ended lab where, the kids are making things. Everything is collaborative. They all work in small teams. And really what we're trying to foster is important soft skills and 21st century skills. The school's really behind that. And that's one of the things that brought me to the campus.
I love it. I love it. So why don't you go into a little bit of the process? Because it seems to me very, very different from a typical classroom. Like how would it work? Like, does everybody come in? Does everyone sit in specific seats, or how do you mix things up? Like, what's the process? How does it differ from
Yeah,
what we've
yeah.
typically seen?
Yeah, that's a great question, Chris. The process is so important. When I was brought on board, and we were kind of talking about how to design the curriculum for the class, I said, well, take everything that you know about your traditional classroom. I said, and throw it out the window. Like,
Hmm.
I don't want to build a classroom. If you're creating a makerspace or a creativity lab, like, let's start from ground zero. So, um, every week, I choose a set of technologies or tools or some kind of engineering challenge.
Hmm.
Um, and that's the starting point for the conversation. So the students come in, we all sit down together, and we talk about this concept or this new tool. And we go over it. We go over how it's utilized in the real world, how they're going to utilize it in the classroom. And then I leave it up to them to brainstorm and form small teams. My only kind of restrictions behind that team formation is, you can't work with the same people every time,
Right.
expand. But really, I don't want to facilitate that, because in the real world, sometimes you don't get to choose who you work with, or sometimes you do, or you have to be a little more critical about who you choose to work with.
Hmm.
And so they form their teams, and then they tackle on the challenge. And really, I'm there to facilitate. A lot of my teaching strategies revolves around, I sit down with them and we talk through, we use design thinking. Really, that's the main methodology that's utilized in the space. And so, we start from a place of empathy and we go through the process. Who are you designing for? What problem are you trying to solve? Create some prototypes on paper and then make real prototypes and see if that works.
Nice.
And if it doesn't,
I love it.
we start all over again. And the really beautiful thing is that naturally they're building, soft skills. They learn how to
Hmm.
advocate for each other. They get a better sense of people's strengths, and they start to assign jobs or roles to each other in a really, again, in a really natural way. I'm not enforcing it. Okay, occasionally I'll have to step in, but for the most part, it happens on its own, and it's really good. It's a really nice counterpart to the more structured learning that's taking place in the other classrooms on campus.
Interesting. Have you ever had any situations that are sort of surprising, where you see things sort of fall into place, like that you'd never expected them to naturally end up doing these things?
Yeah, yeah, I would say I am a good example of that. Chris, is I also work with a high school on campus. We're a K through 12 community, and the high school is an all girls school, while the elementary is co-ed. And so one of the things that we talk about a lot at the high school is the idea of empowering women in STEM fields, and
Hmm.
being advocates. And I think that one of the really, really surprising things is when they come into this space, or at least it was surprising at first, and then it's wonderful that it happens. The young women would come into the lab, and they would have no problem advocating for their thoughts, like,
Hmm.
this is the way it should be and this is why. And I think that the freedom that the space gives them just enabled them to be outspoken about their thoughts. And so I really admire that now. And now I keep an eye out for it. And I notice that that self-advocacy happens at all grade levels in the space. And again, I think it's because I I'm not there to hold their hands as they go through the design process. Really, they're having to navigate it on their own, and so they build confidence, and it's a really nice process. I think that's probably been it's not something that I planned for, and now I think it's one of the best things that happens in the lab.
So would you say this sort of naturally comes out of the personalities of the people, or do you guide that in any way?
Yeah, yeah. I think that depending on the student, some students need to need a little more facilitation. They need a little bit of guidance. Others kind of naturally have it. But I think that one of the really nice outcomes about working collaboratively is that students are learning from one another. And I think that part of that learning is also behavioral. Like they notice, oh, so-and-so wasn't shy about asking their question. Why should I? And so, you kind of see that happen even in their small groups and then in the larger context of the class. And I think that when I see that there's an opportunity for growth that does require my facilitation, that's when I like to step in, because then I feel it's still a natural process, and really I'm just trying to read the needs of the students.
Oh, very cool, very cool. So when you were talking earlier about the engineering challenge, and does it ever come from the students, or does it usually come from you?
No, it comes from both students and from myself. Sometimes they'll come up with just, random ideas, and sometimes the ideas are great, and I run with it, and I think that some of the best projects that we've done have been inspired either by like a kernel of an idea brought up by a student, or really just a cool concept or something neat that they've seen. I encourage them to leave the classroom and continue exploring. And there's a couple of maker websites or YouTube series that I kind of turn them on to. And I say, if you ever see something cool on there, bring it to me and let's see if we can figure it out. I think that I'll share a quick example. I've always wanted to design small air hockey tables, but I just don't have the materials or the time to build one. And one of my students came to me and said, hey, I've discovered this really cool thing. I put a plastic ring around this metal ball bearing, and now it glides across a smooth surface. And I thought, cool. So I said, well, you have to show me. I said, conceptually, it sounds cool, but I want to see it. So he brought it in, and then we were kind of tossing it around one of the workshop tables. And I said, this is brilliant. This is exactly what we can do to build small, air hockey tables without the air. And so then that inspired a project and an investigation. We looked into what the ring does to the weight distribution as it kind of glides through the table. And it was just a really nice moment where they inspired me to create a project for the class.
Very cool. So do you see any commercial products coming out of this?
I wouldn't be surprised.
How many startups are you creating, huh?
Yeah, exactly. I tell the kids all the time, I'm like, one day when you guys are the leaders of a major company or a startup, don't forget about the little people who inspired you to think that way.
I love it. What you mentioned earlier, I thought this was very interesting, is that this is all sort of STEM work that you're doing, but you're actually helping them with their soft skills out of the STEM work. So how does that follow? Did that just sort of naturally come out of what you were doing, or was that part of the purpose of the program?
Yeah, that was definitely from the when we started designing the makerspace at the school. That was one of the primary goals, was to create a space where we could teach those soft skills. And since then, Chris, that's kind of branched out to the high school. I've been working very closely with my colleague Oscar Navarro, who oversees something called the DEDI Innovation Program, Disruptive Innovation Program, where the girls in that program look at disruptive innovations, real world examples of disruptive innovations, everything from blockchain technology to artificial intelligence. And the class revolves around the ideas, the concepts behind those technologies, but they also reflect and look at kind of the financial impacts of those technologies in the real world. And so one of the things that we promote highly in that class is building the soft skills to be able to present ideas. So at the culmination of each unit, which again cover concepts like artificial intelligence, blockchain technology, reusable energy, they have to present, they present some kind of research piece on those technologies. And They work collaboratively in small teams. And really what we're preparing them for is not just their college experience, but, for the jobs of tomorrow.
Yeah, that sounds like it's even beyond the college experience. Because I remember when I was in high school, we were we were nowhere near anything disruptive. But this sounds like you're kind of leaping almost beyond college to the real world and what they can look forward to. I love it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's one of the um, big things that we're doing at the high school is we're working hard to kind of change that traditional high school experience. And one of the programs that we've been working on most recently and that we're rolling out is something called the Emphasis Program. And the idea behind that being that, a girl will come to the high school, they will they'll discover their passions really through a number of different facilitated experiences we have. We're working with all of our faculty to really promote skill building in the areas of research and inquiry, building curiosity naturally across all subjects, and also cross collaboration. So we're working with our staff to find ways for them to cross collaborate and share information. If someone's talking about historic architecture, can they tap into their colleague over in the math department and maybe find ways to make those connections? We're also working on something called the Symposium series as part of this program, where we're taking a theme or a topic, and we're exploring it together as a whole school community. This year, we're exploring the concept of media, and we are bringing special guests on campus to talk to all of the students.
That would be really cool.
Yeah, yeah, we just had we had an event back in October, and one of the guest speakers we brought on board was a TikTok influencer who, has 20 million.
Oh, they must have loved that. They must have loved that.
Yeah, it was a hit. It definitely was a hit. But the conversations that stemmed out of it, right? Because we kind of prepared all the girls and said, look, we're looking at media from a critical perspective, right? With great power comes great responsibility. How does this person develop their content? It's a process, it's a business. Think of it from that perspective. And so it was a couple of students led this panel discussion and they talked to her. We spoke to somebody from an advocacy group that's trying to hold tech companies accountable for all sorts of things. And so
I love it.
Yeah, he talked about their work, and really we're trying to broaden these girls or the students' perspectives about the larger world and how complex it is, and in the classroom, and then by exposing them to what's happening out there through guest speakers and other experiences.
Wow, I absolutely love that. I mean, that is so different from every other high school experience I've heard of. It sounds super disruptive and innovative and progressive. Did you have any sort of pushback when people were trying to move that thing forward? I'm assuming your leadership is pretty progressive and they pushed it forward. Did you get any pushback when you were trying to do these things? Or
yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I think the stance or the strategy and the approach that we're taking, Chris, has been to implement it. We're in our pilot year, so really and even when we were developing it, the idea behind it was always to move the program forward slowly and thoughtfully. We've been as transparent as we can with staff here on campus and with the community at large about, this being a pilot program, and we're testing a lot of things out and we need feedback. So we've been putting out surveys to really figure out what components work and what components don't. And we've been really fortunate that leadership has been responsive and supportive, and more importantly, that our staff, our faculty, and also the student population has been really responsive. And it's a community effort, and things are looking really bright for the program. We're moving into year 2, where we're trying to incorporate a couple of AP courses, advanced placement courses that are inspired by research. And so they're open-ended. Students can basically kind of choose the topics or themes they want to explore. And as long as they do the research properly, they can then present their research paper or project on whatever topic. And again, they're guided by a trained educator in the AP framework. So we're trying our best to really create a forward-thinking community and to prepare our students so when they do walk out of here, they're ready for a world that's constantly changing.
Yeah, no, this is fantastic. I love it. I'm just thinking of, so you did say, did you have any pushback on it when you tried to bring this forward? I mean, was there any kind of, if so, like, how did you get over that barrier? I mean,
yeah, I think that when we first proposed the concept, there was uncertainty. Is this just another thing you're trying out, or is this going to require more of me? And I think that by requesting feedback and really making the process, not just the rollout, but also developing it in kind of a collaborative manner, I think that's how we gained buy-in from stakeholders at different levels. So from the board all the way down to the faculty members teaching, we've gotten pretty positive feedback. And again, it's because we're being as receptive as we can to really figure out what's working and what's not. And so I think that that's been the strategy that we've been using. And as a result, we haven't gotten as much pushback as we anticipated, which has been a great surprise. That's good.
Well, what about, can you tell me a bit about something that didn't work and what you had to throw out?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. I think that one of there's been a couple of things that we've been trying out. One of the things that we have to be mindful of is, we really want, we want involvement at all levels from teachers. And so we also have to be mindful of, they have full plates, with the grading between developing curriculum, teaching their curriculum, and the grading. A lot is already being asked of our educators. And so how can we be responsible? And I think that early on, we had designed a plan that really asked a lot of everybody. And I think we had to pump the brakes a little bit and scale back and really figure out, well, what works for our community? What's going to empower our educators to do the good work that they're already doing, and also participate in this program that we're trying to do and this kind of school cultural shift. And so I think that was one thing, kind of scaling back. We had really, really ambitious plans, and then we scaled back to be a little more thoughtful about our pilot program. Here in the innovation lab and the work that I'm doing with the middle schoolers, Chris, I think one of the things that I kind of had to let go as an educator was when we first came in, right, I wanted to have a really open-ended space. At the same time, I had to, I also had to deal with the classroom management. I have a bunch of 12 to 14-year-olds in my space who are really
not challenging at all. Not challenging at all.
Yes. So how do I, what do I do when I give one a hammer and there's 50 of them, 15 of them running around? And so I was really,
oh my God, sounds like a nightmare. Did you videotape any of that? I mean, it's like, oh, look, chaos.
Yes. And it was a little jarring at first. And I think I'm really fortunate that I have great colleagues and a lot of really experienced classroom teachers who offered great advice just for basic classroom management. And this works, this doesn't work. And an example of one of the things we had to do was we had to be really thoughtful about how many students were going to be in here. It's a space that can, hold 30 kids, but really we wanted 15 in here, about 15 to 18 at a time, so that I could really have that one-to-one facilitation, or at least closer to a one-to-one facilitation with them. And I can break them up into small groups. And yeah, so there was a little trial and error, and it's continuous. I'm always testing things out in the lab, seeing what sticks and what doesn't. And we're taking a similar approach at the high school with this larger program. We're trying a lot of things and we're seeing what works well and what doesn't.
Right. So would you have to scale back your plans a lot? Because I think that's exactly right. Whenever anybody sort of suggests a new innovative initiative, it's always like, okay, what are you going to take off my plate? This is additional work for me, right? You know, are you giving me my 20% time so I can do this work in? Like, how did you just scaled it right back, or how did you get that to work from a job perspective?
Yeah. I think that because of my training in design thinking, and I have training in UX design, like you design for people, right? And that should be your starting point. Mm-hmm. And I've always been, prior to coming to the school, when I was designing educational programming for museums, you know, oftentimes you'll partner up with a school community, and when bad programs are rolled out, it's because they were designed in a bubble and then brought to the community and said, hey, this works for you, and it doesn't. So I've always been of the mindset, like, go to your community first and ask them what they need. What are they looking for? What are their pain points? And then you design your program, right? Then you design that experience catered to that specific community. So I think that to answer your question, Chris, we both here in the lab and what we were asking of our faculty at the high school, and we're still doing, again, this is something we're still trying to figure out, is we're going to them first and saying, what do you like about our concepts and what don't you like about our concepts? Where are areas where you feel we can provide support, and give us that feedback? And then we go back to the drawing board and scale things back or redesign a program. And so that kind of back and forth dialogue has been really, really beneficial for us to move forward. And again, we're not moving super fast. We're trying to take things slowly so that we can implement it and make it sustainable.
So you're saying that your background is UX, and how did you end up in this role?
Yeah.
I'm like, it's like everybody who I know who's an innovator has come from so many different backgrounds. I'm just curious, like, how you ended up where you are.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. So my background was in studio art, and wow. I was just a creative. I wanted to go into design, and I did that for a little while. And through that, a friend of mine was like, well, you really love art. And I said, yeah, I do love art. I think that's what, at the end of the day, that's what brings me back to design. And so I started to teach at museums. I led tours. I started developing like workshops for families and students. And then I just went down that rabbit hole. And then at some point in my career, while I was working for the J. Paul Getty Museum, I thought, you know, I'm designing all sorts of content. I'm designing experiences, in-person experiences. I'm designing web content and digital content. Like I want more experience in how to create for users and user design. So I went and I got training for UX, and I can't tell you, Chris, how incredibly beneficial that was to my profession, because now everything that I design, I start with the audience or community I'm designing for, and it's been so beneficial, even when it comes to writing, you know, promotional text to talk about something, or a newsletter that needs to go out. Thinking about my audience is so crucial. And I have to say, I think that came from that UX training, and it's been really, really beneficial.
Right. What would you say is the most effective way to bring the audience into the conversation? Because you've got gradients of that, right? You've got market research where you're just asking them stuff, and then you've got design thinking, and then you've got building MVPs. Like, where do you think the sweet spot is?
Yeah, that's great. You know, I'm a firm believer in evaluation, and it's collecting data is so useful, and informative, even um, when you're creating educational experiences. I think all the programming that I develop, if I can't hire an outside evaluation team, I develop internal evaluation, because I think that the data and the qualitative and quantitative info you get can really inform your decision making. So I would say I like working closely with partners or with the audience that I'm building for, and I like to survey first, take a temperature gauge and see what is it that they need, or what issues or challenges can I address with the thing that I'm making or designing, and through the process evaluate. Halfway, throw a survey out there or interview a few people, and then most importantly, at the end of the experience or the semester, put out a larger, more formal evaluation to see where you can improve, what you can change, or just throw it out the window if it's really not working.
Yeah. I love it. So that's your sort of, that feeds back into the process, and then you can just iterate, right? But how do you work with measurement? Because I know a lot of these innovation things are like, well, what's the ROI? People want to know, what are you getting at? How do you start? What are you trying to get out of it? And then how do you measure that? I mean, how do you measure? I mean, it's such a new, different, progressive program. How do you measure that, it's doing what it's supposed to be doing?
Yeah. And I think that's part of what we're trying to figure out, right? Is, when we're developing our strategic goals and our strategic plans, how the leadership here at school really likes to identify clear goals and outcomes, and then we try to take all sorts of data and measurements to see if we're hitting those goals. Whether it's qualitative data, right, and we're performing surveys or reaching out to students to figure out if it's working for them. At the same time, there's been a larger push, especially in the last year or so, to look at test scores and academic data, and see if there's any way to kind of pair that up with the qualitative information that we're getting, and then see if there's correlations there, right? Because if this new program is really working out and we're getting a lot of positive feedback, well, is it making an impact in the academic data that we're getting, right, and test scores, et cetera? And if there is a correlation, then yeah, we're headed in the right direction. So I think it's requiring for the leadership here on campus to be a little more thoughtful about how we compare data, how we communicate. So I think that it's been a positive move forward in really looking at the school and analyzing the school's data.
That's interesting, because you'd think you'd need a completely new yardstick because you're doing something completely new. But if you can tie it back to the old yardstick, then that's great, because you can say, oh, here's the improvement that we got. Yeah. But you don't think that you actually need a completely new measurement for what you're providing, or are you doing that as well?
Yeah, no. I mean, I do think I think that one of the areas where we could really spend a little more time looking at the results of the work that we're doing is in that area of the soft skills, because I think that we're really promoting building soft skills. Well, how do you quantify that? How do you measure the success of building those soft skills?
You assess before, and then you assess after, and you go, oh, here's the change, right? But
yeah, that's exactly right. That's an approach. That's absolutely
it's so easy.
Yeah. I think it's a real challenge, and I would say that the conversations that we've been having with individual students has been giving us a glimpse into the outcomes of the work that we're doing. I'll share with you an example. One of the big parts of this new emphasis program that we're rolling out is called the experiential learning opportunities. And essentially, my colleague Oscar is putting together experiential learning opportunities that happen outside of the classroom, not just traditional internships, but apprenticeships, he's also just pairing up students with professionals in various fields so they can do Zoom calls, so they can ask questions. And we've been monitoring the success of that program very closely, and by checking in with the students involved and also the community partners that are offering these different opportunities. And just the responses we've been getting have been really, really positive. Students saying, "Oh, it's eye-opening. I had no idea that this was part of this field," or it's changing my thoughts on the type of careers that I'm considering in the future. So, that kind of those testimonials are, we're really looking at them closely, because I think that if we tie that to other data, maybe some of the college data that my colleagues are collecting, is there a correlation there? Are we broadening our girls' perspectives on what they can do after high school?
Right. Well, I love this model so much. I think it should be spread everywhere. Is there any way you can put it in like a package and say, hey, just join in and take over? Because this is the model of the future of education, if you ask me. You guys are heading in the absolutely right direction. It's like, were you the first person to spearhead it, or were there other folks in leadership that were doing it as well?
Yeah, no, I can't take full credit for this one, Chris. I had just a quick shout out to my colleague Sophia Bovey. She's the dean of the Visual Performing Arts program here on campus, and a few years ago she worked with a few other colleagues of mine, Dr. Chris Vivo and Andrew Dunkel, and they sat down and said, "Hey, how can we make the curriculum here on campus more enriching, more challenging, and also expose the girls to the world out there?" And so they began doing a dive into the AP seminar and AP research framework. So both of these AP courses, again, are research-based, and they revolve around skill building, like skill building around inquiry and research and thorough analysis. And once the students build those skills through a series of units and projects, their kind of culminating project is like an independent research project. And so they really looked at that framework and said, "Hey, this could be a great framework to inspire what we're trying to do." And so from there, they presented it to the administration, and they reached out to me and said, "Hey, can you direct this program and help everyone bring this vision to life?" And I said, yeah, I would love to. I love working with creative people. And again, my colleague Sophia, as the dean of the VPAs and her background in the arts, she's just that creative powerhouse that has helped kind of propel this vision forward.
This is fantastic. Is there any way you could push this down to elementary level? Because I think it needs to be as early as possible.
Yes.
maybe not working with the skill saws and stuff like that, but some of the critical thinking skills and all that stuff. I think it definitely needs to be earlier in the education stream for sure.
Yes. Yeah, and you nailed it. I think that the critical thinking skills is just, it's absolutely necessary. We live in a day and age where we walk around with mini computers in our pockets, and we have access to information constantly. And also, I'll say that the way that students digest media and information now is completely different from the way we received media, even 10 years ago. And so if we aren't making these, what some would consider drastic changes to our educational system, then we're not setting up our students for success, because the world's changing rapidly and we got to keep up.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm 100% with you. We need drastic changes. I love the word.
Yes. Yeah, that's absolutely right. It's absolutely right.
So it's time to think like a futurist. It's the year 2031. It's 10 years from now. Where is this program?
Yeah. So this program, the emphasis program, has been ingrained into the school culture. It is not something that teachers think about as it's happening. It's already happened. We have girls that by their senior year are participating in all sorts of internships and extracurricular opportunities outside of school. It's moved on to our elementary school, and students are learning about the world, right? About the larger world and problem solving for real world issues. And more importantly, this framework has found a way to be disseminated and shared with other school communities. And it's maybe in a couple of pilot programs across other school districts or charter schools, because we really do think that it's a powerful program that could change education.
Oh yeah, you should spin it out as an organization, brand it, and then start just spreading it everywhere, because this is a phenomenal concept.
That's right. So I'll let you know when that nonprofit organization pops open, Chris.
Yeah, I'm there, because I mean, education needs disruption, and this is perfect. I love what you guys are doing. I'm just so I guess I'm a little bit surprised that you got as far as it did, because it seems that the educational system to me seems pretty staid, and it's really hard to push stuff through. And it seems like, you know, you guys were able to make some headway where other people couldn't.
Yeah, I think that one of the benefits of being a smaller school community is that, you know, we're able to make those changes, and so you know, we've all come together again. Leadership and faculty across both campuses have come together and really we're working collaboratively to make this a part of the school culture. And I think that at the elementary school, that shift has been happening for several years now. And here at the high school, we're really starting to head in that direction and slowly make that change.
Now, you're a private school, is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Is that probably one of the reasons why it seems to be moving quicker?
Yeah, definitely. I would say that's you know, that's definitely, again, one of the advantages is that we're a small private school. I think that one of the big challenges that we have is we're trying to make these big changes, but you know, the funding isn't always there. You
need money for this? I thought it was just a mindset change.
Yeah, right? You need resources. Yeah.
It's free, right? It doesn't cost a thing.
Yeah, exactly. So finding the funding to like really push forward with some of our big ideas is, you know, that's always the challenge. So, but we're crafty and we're finding ways to try to find those resources to make it happen.
I love it. Fantastic. This is great. So first of all, you got to send me the link of where I can get that apron, because I want one of those. I want to wear one of those on my show.
You got it.
I'm like,
that's
awesome. I love that. This has been so much fun. Thank you so much. This has been great. So if somebody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
Yeah, the best way to reach me, Chris, is my email. I'll share both of them with you. So you can reach me on my email. I'm also on LinkedIn, Manny Guardado, and you can find me there, and you can find some of my my work from my previous career in museums, and also the work that I'm doing here at Notre Dame Academy. But yeah, email is the best way to reach me. I'm at manny.ahsa@gmail.com and mguardado@ndala.com.
Fantastic. Now, is there a website where the program's detailed at all, so we can get some more information if we wanted to share that with people?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll share the website for Notre Dame Academy Schools of Los Angeles. Again, when you come to our main site, there's two web pages you can go in. There's the lower elementary school and then our high school, and you can learn all about the innovation lab at the elementary school and also the emphasis program that we're rolling out at the high school.
Fantastic. I can't wait to see it as like you said, a nonprofit, you know, spreading the good word of this fantastic new way to educate folks. This is great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome, Chris. Thanks again for having me on the show. And I'm happy to chat anytime.
All right. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Talk to you later. Bye-bye.